That cricket in the 21st century has changed is a statement that most of you would agree with. The volume of cricket in this day and age has reached staggering levels, especially after the advent of T20 cricket. What often happens as a result in such cases is that the sport loses its ability to churn out stories, because so quickly you move from one match to the other, one series to the other, that stories don't get enough time to grip you. It's mere entertainment after a point. You consume and you forget. But sport has always been about stories, hasn't it? And that's why, on number 3 on this countdown, I want to talk about a story from Indian cricket that is so powerful that despite almost the cacophony around it, it has and will go down as one of the greatest stories to have come out of the game. Let's get started then on India's epic series win in Australia in 2020-21 on India's Top 25. December mornings in India can be quite cold, especially if you're in the northern part of the country. But no matter which part of the country they were in, on the morning of the 19th of December, the winter stung a little bit more because of what had happened thousands of miles away in Australia. India were all out for 36 in Adelaide. When they'd gone to sleep the previous night, their team was ahead in the contest. But by the time they'd woken up, the game was all but over. And as it always happens, the 36 all out became the hottest topic of discussion in the country. For some, it was a realization of their worst fears, and for some, it was an opportunity to punch down a team that was hurting. And we saw all of that transpire on social media, on news channel debates, in scathing articles in newspapers. But as the world around them exploded, the team, now under Ajinkya Rahane, decided not to. As much as they recognized that it was a good opportunity lost, especially from the position they were in at the end of the second day, they also realized that 36 all-out was an aberration. They trusted their process that had earned them wins in tough conditions and decided to stick together as a unit. Yes, Virat Kohli's departure ahead of the Melbourne Test for the arrival of his first child did leave a big hole in the batting lineup. He was India's best player in Australia. But Ajinkya Rahane stepped up as a leader quickly. It was a role that he knew he would have to step up to, since Virat had already announced before the series that he would leave after the Adelaide Test. And so, out walked Rahane with his 10 men at Melbourne, with the entire world waiting to see what their answer to the week-long noise around them would be. Jasprit Bumrah, who had lit up the MCG in 2018, went on to do something similar this time around too. And this time he had Ravi Ashwin for support. The two of them shared 7 wickets as Australia were all out for less than 200 in the first innings. But still, Australia knew exactly what had happened the last time India had batted, so they knew they were not out of the contest yet. Not this time, said this gentle-looking boy from Mumbai, taking on arguably the best attack, and that too in a packed MCG in the Boxing Day Test. Rahane rose to the occasion. He scored a century that truly meant so much more than the 112 runs written on the scoreboard. There couldn't have been a better time to score a century. Not just for the batter Rahane, not just for Team India, but also for the fans who were hurting and waiting to see how India bounces back from the Adelaide debacle. And that was it, the catalyst. The next innings saw an even more complete effort from the bowling unit. Remember, this was a bowling unit which was already missing Mohammad Shami, and now even Umesh Yadav got injured in the second innings. Yet, they did what they did. Bumrah took out Steve Smith while Ashwin kept Labuschagne quiet, and that meant that this time India had a small total to chase down to win the match and level the series. They did that with ease and ensured that billions of Indians celebrated their new year with a little more pride, and also with a lot of anticipation of what Sydney would bring. And as if just on cue, Sydney brought yet another riveting contest, the one that once again showed how determined this bunch was. Steve Smith finally did Steve Smith things with the bat. And Australia were able to put an Indian side battling with injuries under the pump in the final innings. And the odds looked completely in their favour, with more injuries to Indian players, including Vihari and Bumrah. But Rishabh Pant and Cheteshwar Pujara, two batters as different as chalk and cheese, made Australia nervous about their prospects, despite the target being in excess of 400. But once Pant's innings ended, India were once again staring down the barrel. The last recognised pair of Hanuma Vihari and Ravichandran Ashwin had more than 40 overs to bat out if India were to save this test. Ravindra Jadeja was to follow still, but he had already broken his finger. So trust me, the entire country counted every ball sitting in front of their television screen. I did too. But these two kept fighting. Vihari's injury had already ruled him out of the final test, and so this was his final bow in this series, and he made sure he made it a memorable one. A score of 23 it was on the scorecard. But anyone who watched that knock would tell you that it was way more important than many hundreds scored. And to go with Vihari's torn hamstring was Ashwin's sore back, which was to rule him out of the series too. With a lot of skill and loads of determination, thanks to the efforts of Ashwin and Vihari, India managed to go into the final test with the hope that they could still win the series. But how do you win a series in Australia? Without Virat Kohli, Mohammad Shami, Jasprit Bumrah, Ravichandran Ashwin, Ravindra Jadeja, how? At the Gabba, which the Australian fans call the Gabba for how the opposition teams are slaughtered here, came the answer from one of the most unheralded Indian 11 that I have ever seen. India's bowling attack was made up of Mohammad Siraj, Navdeep Saini, Washington Sundar, Shardul Thakur and T. Natarajan. Siraj, playing his third test, was the most experienced of this lot, and the total number of test wickets India carried into this game from the bowlers was 11. Australia's great quartet, arrayed against them, had over 1,000. And somehow, they still managed to bowl Australia out twice. India, though, still had a mountain to climb when the final day began. A chase of 329 is daunting for any team in any conditions. And this was a depleted Indian side at the end of a long tour at the Gabba. Well, that's maybe what the world saw. The team didn't seem to. A young Shubman Gill blitzed his way to 90. Pujara blunted the pace attack of Stark, Hazelwood and Cummins by taking blow after blow on his body. We all winced when we were watching it. And then the chef's kiss. Rishabh Pant playing a knock for the ages against the ticking clock. And that's how India scripted the most glorious come-from-behind series win ever. The courage, the determination, the tenacity that the unit showed under the captaincy of the cool as a cucumber Rahane will be talked about for decades, hopefully for centuries. As always, a question before we end this episode. In the Gabba test, the turning point came in the form of a counter-attacking 123-run partnership between which two lower-order Indian batters?
So thanks for watching and do subscribe to this channel.